sclerosis an autoimmune disease. Many experts boldly state that multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease, yet the proof is lacking. So, today I'd like to spend some time sharing some of the information, the science that we know about multiple sclerosis and help to bring some clarity because we're kind of stuck in this paradigm. We're not able to move forward and find the cause of multiple sclerosis or the cure. So, let's look at the evidence or lack of evidence that multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune disease. And I'd like to really share some evidence that really supports the fact that it is not an autoimmune disease, but actually multiple sclerosis is just our immune system is battling parasites. And these parasites have not been identified by our standard of care yet at this time. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha. I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. And I am really excited to talk about these kind of topics. I have a science degree. I'm going to try really hard to simplify the science for you because I think one of the biggest reasons why we're so stuck, why we're not finding a cure for multiple sclerosis is because we trust, right? We trust the experts. We don't know the language of biology. And so we're just like, well, they're the experts, they know what they're doing. And we just have given up basically our health, our responsibility that we should have in our health. We've given that up to others. And so I'm going to simplify this science for you and really help you to say, like, oh my goodness, like this science is really weak about MS or other diseases being autoimmune. And then we'll talk about why we are stuck in this paradigm. So, right now, currently, there are at least 80 different types of autoimmune diseases, different types of autoimmune diseases. And with all autoimmune disease, we know that they are inflammatory conditions, there is no known cause, and there is no cure. It's just our immune system is attacking random parts of our body, random tissues. So, with multiple sclerosis, some people say that some experts say that it's an autoimmune disease where our immune system is attacking our nerve cells. But essentially, with autoimmune, like the body or the immune system could be attacking any type of tissue in our body. But in science, we know that the main job for the immune system is to defend us from parasites, different infections, and the toxins that they produce. And what's crazy is that infection is known in science to be a really common trigger for autoimmune disease. And the microbes that live in the body, they really impact the degree of sickness that a person is going to suffer with when they have an autoimmune disease. So in the standard of care, they feel that the immune system has turned on the body and that is just attacking our own tissue. Whereas what I believe and what a lot of the science and the forward-thinking doctors believe is that no, there's just infection present. There's parasites present that we have not identified yet, and the immune system is just doing its job. It's trying to defend us. So autoimmune disease, what they call autoimmune disease, is they really affect people of all ages, but they really in particularly affect women more than men. And I believe that has to do with our hormones because the hormones are very important but very powerful molecules that our body produces, and they really impact the biochemistry in our bodies. So at certain times of the month, we may have more of a certain type of hormone where the inflammatory immune response is more suppressed. So that would mean the fighting mechanism of our immune system is not as active, and maybe we have a higher blood sugar level. So there's various things like that can really impact the microbes that live in our body. So in order to diagnose autoimmune disease, certain tests should be done. So first of all, they're looking for the presence of autoantibodies. So you know that our immune cells can make antibodies, and that is part of our natural defense against infection. And so the antibodies can actually destroy cells, or they can call in other immune cells to destroy cells too. But autoantibodies are antibodies that theoretically, again, this is all autoimmune disease is theory. So they believe that these autoantibodies are just our immune cells, our T and our B immune cells are producing antibodies that will attack certain parts of our own tissue. So, for example, with the myelin sheath around our nerve fibers, that there's maybe a myelin protein. And so they believe that, well, these autoantibodies, they are going to attack the myelin protein. So, in order to diagnose MS or to test for, sorry, in order to diagnose or to test for autoimmune disease, they have to see that these autoantibodies are present. Again, these are antibodies that would target specific substances in our body. And the presence of autoreactive T and B cells, so those are specific immune cells. They also, if there's an autoimmune disease, they expect to see these immune cells that are reacting against our own tissue. Also, they want to be able to see that there is an ability for autoimmune disease, that there's ability to transfer cells and also these autoantibodies from somebody who's sick into an experimental animal and cause the disease in that animal. So they say it should be able to be transferred from a person to an animal and create that disease in the animal. And also the presence of inflammation and immune complexes are supposed to be present at the site of damage, and also the ability to transfer the disease across the placenta. So these are all different types of tests that would show that a certain disease is an autoimmune disease. But it's really surprising that many diseases that are considered to be autoimmune diseases, they do not fully meet the above criteria that I just shared with you. And they would then be called inflammatory diseases or immune mediated diseases. So immune mediated just means that the immune system is active. It's fighting something, right? And we know that the main job of our immune system is to defend us from infections and the poisons they produce. So there's this video, and I didn't want to disrupt this video to put it in there, but on our blog post, so make sure that you are receiving our newsletters, but I always publish at the end of the week a newsletter, and I'm going to be putting that short clip in there. It's just like 30 seconds, but it's so fascinating to hear these experts in MS, and they're like, one of them will be saying like, oh, well, so MS is an autoimmune disease. And then the other person pipes up, you can't call it an autoimmune disease. We've never isolated the autoantigen. So autoantigen means like the myelin protein. Antigen is like something that shouldn't be there that the immune system is reacting to. So they've never isolated or proven that there's a specific autoantigen, like a specific target of our cells that is present to call it an autoimmune disease, to call MS an autoimmune disease. And then he goes, well, yeah, you're right. But then what's causing it? And then she's like, well, it could be EBV. And then he's like, well, 96% of the population is positive, test positive for Epstein-Barr virus. So how can we say it's that? And then the other guy is like, well, it's probably just environmental and genetic factors. It's like, really, that's what you have at this stage of the game after I was diagnosed with MS 35 years ago, and we are still just humming and hawing about we have no idea what causes it. It's like this story is getting really old. Do you agree? It's getting really, really old. So on that video, they say, they just blatantly, like, we've never identified this auto antigen, which would be a part of the body that are the B and T cells would create these auto antibodies that would attack the auto antigen. So an auto antigen again would be something like, for example, let's say a myelin protein. So myelin, part of the myelin sheath, it would be a protein, and for some reason our immune system would just be attacking it. We'll talk about why it could possibly be attacking myelin protein. So although antibodies are considered important, so I'm going to share some highlights from just a recent paper, and it really helps you to see the conflicting information about autoimmunity, and you'll be like, oh my goodness, like it's like, it could be this, but it could be that, but it could be this, but it may not be that. And it could be this, but it doesn't always show up like that. And it's just like, well, why are we holding on to this theory? Why are we holding on to this belief? It's not serving the people. So although these autoantibodies are considered important for diagnosing and classifying autoimmune diseases, they admit that often there is no obvious link between the autoantibody attacks and the illness a person suffers with. So they're like, we're finding these autoantibodies possibly in people that have what we've called autoimmune disease, but we're not being able to find a link between the presence of them and the illness that a person's suffering with. Researchers also know that certain autoantibodies are associated with specific symptoms, but they don't know what causes that association. It's also interesting that autoantibodies are found in healthy people. So people that don't have disease, they're finding autoantibodies in them also. And also they're finding autoantibodies in people that suffer from diseases that are not considered to be autoimmune diseases. And they're also finding autoantibodies of the same type, so the same types of autoantibodies, but they're finding them in different types of autoimmune diseases. Also, researchers have found autoantibodies present in patients who are diagnosed with autoimmune disease, yet they're asymptomatic. So they've diagnosed somebody with autoimmune disease, they have no symptoms, but they still have these autoantibodies that they're able to detect. So limitations in testing for autoantibodies. So blood tests have not found autoantigens. So that would be like, and just think of antigen is like something foreign that shouldn't be there. So for example, like if you have myelin protein, it should be on the myelin sheath, right? It shouldn't be floating around in the spinal fluid. So that would be called an antigen if it's floating around where it shouldn't be. So anything that's foreign, that shouldn't be there. So it could be parasites, it could be infection, it could be toxins they produce, it could be parts of our body that are from damaged cells that shouldn't be floating around in the spinal fluid or in other fluid. So an autoantigen would be self. So it would be probably like some kind of substance from our body, and it could be debris from damaged or dead cells for sure. So blood tests have not found autoantigens. So those are the substances that are made by the body that the antibodies are reacting to, where they would expect to find them. So they're not finding them where they would expect to find them, and that often leads to false negative results. Although many autoantibodies have been identified, tests are only available for a few of them. For example, there's been over 100 different autoantibodies that have been reported in people that have been diagnosed with lupus, but very few tests are available. And diseases that involve, let's say, a different autoimmune disease that might involve the skin, or the different diseases that involve joints or blood vessels or kidneys, or the blood vessels in the lungs, and also hepatitis, they're all associated. So these are very different diseases, and they're all associated with autoantibodies against parts of the nucleus of the cell. So that's where our genetic material is held, in the nucleus of the cell. So all of these different diseases, they're varied, right? They all have autoantibodies to parts of the cell nucleus. Now this, I'm just going to read it off exactly the way it is, because it's really, it tells a lot. Although studies of autoimmune disease usually assume that autoantibodies initiate inflammation, so that a lot of studies just believe that in autoimmune disease that it's the autoreactive B cells and T cells are making these autoantibodies against some part of our tissue that are going to attack our tissue. And that's what initiates inflammation, right? This is why all diseases are diseases, because there's inflammation involved. And they're saying, although a lot of studies assume that that's the case, nonetheless, it is nevertheless possible that these antibodies arise, they they come into play as a consequence of damage induced by some other mechanism like infection, for example. So infections are present. Parasites, we know that they get into the central nervous system and any parts of the body. And so they're going to cause damage to cells. And could it be that they're just saying, so maybe it's just that some other mechanism like infection causes damage to cells, and that causes the immune system to clean up the mess and to react to the debris of cells. So sure, if there is an infection, like I'll share later on, but Dr. Al McDonald found Borrelia, the bacteria that causes Lyme disease, found them in the myelin sheath of nerve cells. So do you think if you have bacteria in your myelin, do you think there could be some damage? Do you think there could be some debris? Do you think the immune system might be doing its job to clean that up and maybe creating autoantibodies and saying, hey, we need the cleanup crew here. We got to get some other immune cells. That sounds a little more logical than just, oh, your immune system has just gone haywire and it's just going after random tissues, right? So they just kind of give it away, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but to me this is just so ridiculously obvious, and I don't know if sometimes we get so smart that we become dumb that we don't see what's right in front of our eyes. That's my humble opinion. So the role of microorganisms in autoimmune disease. So please share your comments. I'd really like to hear what you think of all of this. If you are quite shocked with like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize that the criteria for diagnosing autoimmune disease was so like wishy-washy, and then it's not really being held up to those standards, and it's not clear, right? Microbes are the most likely trigger of autoimmune disease. That's what the science says. The immune response to different infections can be symptomatic or asymptomatic. So if we have certain microbes that are pathogens, but they're present in very small numbers, then we may be asymptomatic. Or sometimes I've mentioned that there's at least 17 different ways that these parasites can cause immune dysfunction. So they need to hide from our immune system. They need to be blind to our immune system so that our immune system doesn't take them out. And that could be another reason why we are asymptomatic. The microbiota includes different types of worms, so roundworms and flatworms, huge worms like several feet long, and tiny microscopic worms that Dr. Alan McDonald has found in the central nervous system of every MS subject that he looked at. Also protists, which are single-cell parasites, but also bacteria. I've shared tons of research about the bacteria, but also the toxins they produce can cause leaky brain, and can, like Clostridia, are nasty, nasty bacteria. Fungi, they have been located in the central nervous system and even in the brain cells, in the nucleus of the brain cells in MS patients. So all of these microbes are responsible for producing many toxins and other foreign substances, and they cause inflammation because our immune system wants to get them out of there. That's its job. It's getting the foreign invaders out of our central nervous system and out of different parts of the body. It doesn't matter what tissue it is. So there is a huge variety of microorganisms that live in the gut, the mouth, and the skin. So I share that on my masterclass training. There could be up to 10,000 different types of microbes that live in our body, and more bacterial cells are present in our body than the cells are human cells. So we have more bacterial cells in our body than we have human cells. That is how many microbes live in our body. And it's almost like we're this shell that carries this ecosystem of microbes. And when we have a disruption to this microbiome, it can lead to dysbiosis, which I've been talking about for over 10 years. And that means we're out of balance. We have too many disease-causing microbes and not enough health-promoting microbes. And these disturbances in our microbes, they really impact function, and they really impact our immune system for sure. Dysbiosis can induce both nonspecific and specific immune responses that can lead to autoreactivity. So I don't know what the big mystery is, why they're like, well, it could be environmental factors, it could be genetic factors, when they know that the microbiome is the main trigger, the biggest cause of triggering autoimmune disease. And we know about dysbiosis, and we know that there's so many different microbes that can cause autoreactivity. It's like, do we not have enough evidence? Let's start to figure out, is it always the same parasites? Are there a handful of common parasites? Like, why is it that the panel of experts that decide how MS is diagnosed and how it's treated, why is it that when they don't know what causes MS and there is no cure, why is it that they do not feel there's any value in looking for parasitic infections in multiple sclerosis? Why? We'll wrap that up at the end. So, for example, in rheumatoid arthritis, there is an increase of a specific bacteria in the gut, which is associated with increased symptoms. And the same thing is true, and also autoantibodies. And the same thing is true for uh, lupus. So, lupus is another example where there could be more than one bacteria, but they've isolated one bacteria that's present in lupus in the gut of people that have lupus, and that is associated with a lot more symptoms of lupus, and also the autoantibodies are present. So the autoantibodies, what I'd like you to start considering is maybe those autoantibodies are present because those parasites are causing damage to the cells. Then there might be parts of our self that are floating around debris that our immune system needs to clear up. And that's what I believe is the case. And that makes a lot more sense. Leaky gut allows microbes from the intestines to move cross from the gut lining into the blood, and they settle in tissues all over the body. They can cross the blood-brain barrier, but then also there's biting insects that we can become infected with parasites through biting insects. That's another way. So leaky gut is really a big problem, and leaky brain, and I've shared lots of information about leaky brain. And we have good enough tests now that we can actually identify different microbes in virtually all tissues in our body can become infected, or even in low-grade amounts of different microbes in all types of tissues in our body. And again, if they're present in small numbers, they're not going to cause a lot of problem, but it's when they're present in larger numbers, there's going to be more damage, and then there's going to be more these autoantigens, debris, and there's going to be more of the immune system reacting to that for sure. So our diet has a major impact on the types of microbes that live inside of our body, and the Live Disease-Free diet is incredibly helpful to help us to, number one, make those parasites a little less active. We notice inflammation starts to go down because our immune system doesn't have to work so hard. And we notice a great reduction in symptoms and a huge improvement in symptoms just with diet alone. But in order to recover from these autoimmune diseases, we still have to treat the parasites for sure. That's very, very important. Patients may show autoantibodies in their blood many years before the signs and symptoms of autoimmune disease. That's another big statement here. Patients may show these autoantibodies in their blood many years before they have any signs or symptoms of autoimmune disease. So we could have these parasites present, there could be some damage, our immune system is cleaning it up, but we don't have a disease label. Maybe we have some low-grade symptoms and we just don't have enough symptoms to get this big disease label like MS, ALS, PLS, Parkinson's, cancer, etc. So making sense of all of this autoimmune disease information, the theory of autoimmune disease, that's my humble opinion. So understanding how these microbes, how they live in our body and how they impact us in health and disease, that is one of the most heavily researched fields in science today. And MS and all autoimmune diseases are inflammatory conditions. Inflammation is the war zone. Inflammation is the area where your immune system is fighting something, it is fighting the enemy. The primary job, the primary purpose of our immune system is to defend us from these different types of infections and the toxins they produce. And there are thousands of microbes that can get out of balance, especially when we overuse antibiotics. With leaky gut, the microbes move from our intestines. They're able to cross into our blood. They're able to travel into different parts of our body, settle in any tissue. And it's really where the parasites settle that they give us specific symptoms, and that lines up with a specific autoimmune disease. And then they have specific immune suppressive drugs for the specific autoimmune disease that we have, where they don't know what causes it and there is no cure. Our current tests to identify these different types of infections is very poor. We are not investing research into better tests for parasites. They're not interested in looking at parasites because that's what's making us sick. And it's so cost effective to treat parasites. Like, if we're really infested and we've been dealing with chronic disease for years, yes, it's a bit of a challenge to treat a parasitic infestation. That's why it's so important to treat early. And like even before we're diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, to treat would be ideal, or any other chronic disease. When we start to have gut issues and when we start to get weird neurological signs, before any disease label is given to us, we should be correcting our microbiome at that point and just saving a lot of money and a lot of heartache and a lot of suffering. It would be life-changing. And some people find our Live Disease-Free plan early enough. I was just speaking to a lady today who's joining, and she hasn't even been diagnosed, but she has enough symptoms similar to MS. She's like, I don't want to wait till October till my appointment. I want to recover from whatever these parasites are now. And that's really the smartest way to go. So there are many forward-thinking healthcare professionals, I call them hero doctors, hero practitioners, that really believe that the concept of autoimmunity cannot exist without some type of infection involved. So there is no such thing as just our immune system attacking ourselves for no reason. And there are many doctors that feel that way. They believe that what appears to be autoimmune disease is simply the immune system is fighting an unidentified microorganism and the toxins that they produce. And it appears that these autoantibodies are just the immune system removing damaged cell and damaged cell fragments that are caused by these infections. So on our livediseasefree.com website, under the research tab, you'll see that we have, and also our blog posts, but under the research tab, you will see that I have evidence that multiple sclerosis is an infectious disease, and you'll be able to see evidence that Dr. Alan MacDonald has found Borrelia, which is the spirochete that causes Lyme disease, and there's at least 100 years of studies, of scientific studies, where they have found these spirochete, these corkscrew bacteria like Lyme disease, over 100 years in MS patients. They've also found malaria babesia type protist. There's 100 years of research showing that they're finding that in that kind of protist in MS patients. Also, Dr. Alan MacDonald has also found filarial roundworms in the central nervous system of every MS subject that he looked at. Also, juvenile tapeworms and tapeworm larval cysts in the central nervous system of every MS. The tapeworm larval cyst in the central nervous system of every MS subject he tested, but in 2 out of the 10, he found the also developing tapeworms in the central nervous system of MS patients. So pretty crazy. So there's tons of evidence. There's lots of evidence that shows that fungus is present in the central nervous system. So we have all of this evidence that microbes are in the central nervous system of MS patients. We know that the immune system is fighting something. So the experts say we can't call it an autoimmune disease, but it's an immune mediated disease, which means the immune system is fighting something, right? And it's it's not really that hard. Like, I think you guys can put it together. It's pretty easy. But why? Why are we still stuck on this autoimmune theory? So, before I go to that, I just wanted to share too that another reason why this whole theory of autoimmune disease, it just doesn't make sense and it is not logical and it can't be true, because if our immune system is attacking our tissue, it's gone haywire. Who knows why, but it just has gone rogue and it's just attacking our tissue. Then it doesn't matter what we eat, it doesn't matter what we do, our immune cells are going to attack our tissue. End of story. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So it doesn't matter treating parasites, nothing would make any difference. But what happens is when we treat parasites and we support the body with nutrition and all of the important things, we use a holistic approach, we restore balance to the microbiome, and all of a sudden the autoimmune disease stops, it goes into remission. How is that possible if it's just that these autoantibodies are going to keep attacking our nerve tissue or whatever tissue, our joints, or whatever disease we're dealing with? So there, there's just so many reasons why the whole idea of autoimmunity is just false. It is wrong. And we are spending millions of dollars like trying to, study chemicals and molecules and cells and cytokines and, you know, while meanwhile, people are, like, I spoke to several people today, and their life has been literally hell. Like, it's like one is a healthcare professional. She gave her life during COVID. She worked so hard. She wasn't willing to take the you know what, and she ended up getting an attack, like with all of the stress and everything, like how they treated people that didn't get the you know what. And like, and she's like a healthcare professional and she's almost completely disabled, and this shouldn't happen. There's no reason for this to happen other than we're really out of balance with our healthcare system right now. Our healthcare system is not running ethically. It really is not. I should say parts of it are not. I know that there's a lot that's good about our healthcare system. If you get in a car accident, they'll save your life. My son was born early, premature. They protected him, gave him enough oxygen, helped, and that was just before I was diagnosed with MS. They can stabilize us. But when it comes to chronic disease, these immunosuppressive maintenance pharmaceuticals that we're supposed to take for the rest of our life, they actually make matters worse. Several doctors that I've heard have said, if MS is caused by a parasitic infestation and it's not autoimmunity, but there's actually parasites that are causing it, and then we suppress the immune system even further, that is a recipe for disaster. And that's what we're doing. And it breaks my heart what we're doing to people that have MS. It's just, there's just no words to describe what it is. And I'm not blaming our doctors. When you go to school for 10 or 12 years and you're told this is the science, this is the only treatment, this is the best treatment, and you're getting biased studies at how well these treatments work, and then years later we find out they never did work because it was never our T cells and our B cells that are the problem. The problem is that our microbiome is out of balance and we have certain microbes that are causing our immune system to fight them, and we just haven't identified them yet. So very, very important that we start talking about this. We start sharing the research. This is what I'm doing. I'm spending a lot of time going through the scientific literature and really simplifying the language so that we understand, why we're still doing this, and for us to say this is not acceptable, this is not okay, we want different. And It's true that maybe our neurologists are not going to be open to that, but we can definitely share this with groups. We can start talking. We can start, hey, did you know? And that's what and gives people hope, because most people still to this day have never heard that infections could be causing their autoimmune disease, that parasites could be causing their autoimmune disease. They've never heard that before. It's brand new to them. I today talking to people, they never heard that before. And I learned this 35 years ago when I was diagnosed with MS. That is how I have been able to live MS free for 35 years. One last thing I wanted to mention, and then I'll go to questions, is that Dr. Klinghardt has shared that when we have Lyme disease, for example, and we take antibiotics, the bacteria, the Lyme spirochete, is pretty smart and it recognizes the danger. And so it produces Lyme cysts. And a cyst is like a dormant form, which is really hard to treat, and it will persist in our tissues. So our immune system will recognize that that's foreign and will attack these cysts, and it causes inflammation too. So it's not just the spirochete, but it's also the cysts that they produce. So these microbes want to make sure that they keep living in the host, and we're the host. And so they find ways to make sure that they are going to persist. And that's just one way. So autoimmune disease is, I believe, and what the science is showing is that it's just our immune system is active, it's actively fighting a parasite, but we just haven't identified which parasite it's fighting, and it's not randomly attacking itself. Hello, Facebook user. Let's see here. Hi, Sheila. Hi, Maurice. Hi, Vicky. What do you guys think of this? So you said speckled, Anna, so far here. I'm not sure what you mean. You always, so Davida, I always lean forward to, look forward to the sessions. So Heidi, my mom had MS, and I have suspected having it and have done years of researching. Epstein-Barr virus is associated with low vitamin D, and we have candida, but many of us are overloaded because of the antibiotics and hormones. So yes, those are all the things that I learned about early on, like the virus connection and the candida connection. But if you haven't watched our videos and looked at our blog posts, Heidi, I would really encourage you to. That's on livediseasefree.com. You'll find there that it's not just candida. And I have done a blog post and a video about the Epstein-Barr virus study that they're trying to link MS with Epstein-Barr, and it's really, really pathetically weak. And I really believe they just would like to create a vaccine for the virus, but it's not going. And I actually just spoke with a person today that went through a whole bunch. So like the functional medicine doctor said, oh, you have your Epstein-Barr virus is like a really, really high test score. And they did a bunch of antiviral work and she's still sick. Like it made absolutely no difference. I believe that the Epstein-Barr virus is kind of like a decoy, in my humble opinion also. So as far as like candida, that's kind of like what we thought about years and years ago. When I was first diagnosed, there were multiple doctors that were talking about candida, but it's a lot more than just candida. It is definitely different types of parasites, worms, flukes, flatworms, roundworms, Lyme disease for sure, candida absolutely. But now with all the research we've done, I really don't believe that candida is the culprit. I believe that candida is going to be present more because, well, it's present in people that don't have MS also, but when our microbiome is out of balance and we have these other parasites which are suppressing our immune system, then candida can also be a little bit more persistent. No, Epstein-Barr virus is a virus, and viruses don't eat anything. They would not feed off of candida, and there's so much misinformation. So viruses are not living. They don't eat anything, and they don't need food. And that's another thing. Like if Epstein-Barr virus was causing MS, then why do we notice such huge improvements in symptoms when we decrease carbs? It wouldn't make any difference for Epstein-Barr virus at all because viruses are not living. That's something you learn in biology. So, Vicky, when the worms move and penetrate, they also allow the bacteria and fungi to penetrate those areas. Well, what I believe is that the worms carry, especially the bigger worms, they have their own microbiome. Well, Dr. Alan MacDonald has shown in research that those very small filarial worms, which are very hard to see even with your naked eye, they carry Borrelia, which is a bacteria that causes Lyme disease. They could carry other microbes, but he's only tested Borrelia. So then you can imagine what large roundworms and tapeworms, they carry their own microbes. So they infect us with their microbes. And then fungi loves to clean up debris, right? So fungus is going to live where there's waste from the worms and, cells and et cetera. So that's a perfect growing environment for fungi. So I would think that the candida would be more present and different types of molds would be more present when we have a lot of guck from. And when you see the videos from Dr. Al McDonald, you'll see that the spinal fluid can look really chalky from the presence of the worm. So they're depositing their waste inside of us. They die and the debris, etc. So that's a perfect growing field for fungi. Fungi are the recyclers of the world. Couple more questions here. Big yes, I won't say the word. Is cloves helpful? And cloves is a type of herb, and so cloves will treat certain parasites. But if you're recovering from MS, like a lot of the standard in the health food stores and online, they'll have wormwood, cloves, and black walnut, which are great. And you might pass some parasites, but you will probably find that you don't notice any difference in your MS symptoms. That's what our students have found. But so I like the flavor or the smell and the taste of cloves, but it's not really going to be enough to recover from chronic disease. Before I forget, I just wanted to share, like, if you are in Canada or if you have family in Canada or if you have friends in Canada or if you're a Canadian, please visit, and I hope I have their website open here. Let me see. I don't know that I have their website. So it's basically Sean Buckley is his name. So he's a lawyer, Sean Buckley. And no, I don't have it here. If I look it up really quickly, it's really important. So the organization is NHPPA. NHPPA. So our Canadian government, they are acting quite tyrannical. They have passed a bill this spring, and it's a censorship bill. So they want to be able to censor what we say online. And they are also, what they have just passed is another bill which can put our natural health supplements in jeopardy. So they want to really have natural health supplements to be regulated like the pharmaceutical drugs, which will drive up costs, which will make the small and medium companies that make natural health products, so like cloves and black walnut, and it's going to be really hard to access these natural health products. And then practitioners like naturopaths or even myself, we're not allowed to talk. I'm not allowed to say, yeah, cloves traditionally has been an anti-parasite herb. We won't be able to talk like that anymore. And the fines are just astronomically high, like we're talking millions of dollars. We could lose all of our natural health products and only have access to drugs in Canada. And we can also lose all of our naturopaths because they can't treat naturally anymore. So this is a really, really huge thing that I just found out over the last few days. And we really need to take action as Canadians. And so go to the NHPPA, Natural Health Products, some kind of association, Sean Buckley, Uckley. So we had something similar like this in Canada in 2008, and there was a huge outcry in the public, and they had to back down, or they did back down. So we're hoping that we can really draw up a lot of interest in people, and it's like writing letters. So if you connect with the NHPPA, they'll tell you what action steps are most effective, but this is very, very dangerous. Yeah, and it's really awful. So I just wanted to mention that's it's kind of like a crisis thing that we have to deal with right now. So Wendy is still recovering, awesome, and she's getting stronger. So Wendy is a wellness champion. You're so very welcome. Is it Giza? Hope I pronounced your name correctly. And another Facebook user said, I had a cyst in my brain and I took a parasite drug and that broke it up and now it's gone. So yes, and that's the crazy thing is that, it could be fungus, it could be worms, it could be bacteria, it could be protists. So they cause these lesions in the central nerve. Parasites cause lesions in the central nervous system. And that's another, I shared so much evidence that MS is an infectious disease. And now I'm just disputing that MS is not an autoimmune disease. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. LiveDiseaseFree.com is the website. Nearly everyone has EBV. Oh, you're very educated on that, and it will remain in the body for life. EBV is associated with many diseases as well. And that's the thing is if Epstein-Barr virus is present in 96% of the population, then that's probably not a really big factor in MS, because otherwise we'd have a lot more people that had multiple sclerosis that don't. And DD, hello. Your MS is 10 times worse since going through menopause. Your naturopathic thinks HRT may help. In my humble opinion, I personally would not use hormone replacement therapy. So when you take hormones, they're very powerful and they will suppress your immune system. And that might make you feel a little better. But again, if you have parasites and you're suppressing your immune system, the parasites can take over more quickly. So I personally, what we have found in our students is every woman that is premenopausal, postmenopausal, they think that their symptoms are all hormonal and they are on hormone replacement therapy. They actually come off of it because they want to, and they treat the parasites. So they support the body. They have lots of nutrition. They use holistic, like building a healthy lifestyle and lots of nutrition and all that. And then they treat the parasites, and all of those day sweats, night sweats, mood swings, all of the symptoms go away, and they go, oh, I guess you were right. I guess it was just parasites that were causing hormone or symptoms that I thought were hormonal symptoms. So that's what we have seen every single time. So when you go through menopause, there are fluctuations with your hormones, and that can make the parasites more active, and that's probably why you had more symptoms. So I personally would not do hormone replacement therapy. Our Canadian government, this was many years ago when they were maybe not quite as openly doing the things they're doing now, they shared on Stats Canada that a woman on hormone replacement therapy for 5 years or longer increases their risk for arthritis, which is an inflammatory disease, significantly increases their risk for arthritis. What do I think about methylene blue? So again, it could be a tool in helping to treat certain microbes. So it's really helpful for malaria and possibly can be helpful in treating Lyme. But just haphazardly just using that, it's not going to cure MS. That's the problem. It's not just a Borrelia problem. But it could be helpful. The only thing with methylene blue is you really have to be careful with the source, because some of the methylene blue sources, or a lot of them, they have a lot of heavy metal toxicity in it, and the methylene blue goes into your brain, and it's really hard to get metals out of your brain. Not impossible, but it's a lot harder to get them out of the brain. So It's not my first choice if people use other things that work well that are not going to potentially cause more problems with metals. And Davita, is the only way to get rid of parasites through pharmaceuticals and diet? No, we use a combination of oxidizing therapies, which are oxygen therapies, and we first support the body through diet and just the checklist for healing. So just doing a lot of things to support our body, and we're feeling a lot better. Then we treat using parasite drugs, herbs, and oxidizing agents. So we're using oxygen, herbs, and the parasite drugs. We've tried it without the parasite drugs, and we just don't pass those very big worms. And you're not going to be able to treat the parasites in the central nervous system very well either, just with herbs alone at this time. I'm hoping that, as more and more awareness becomes and more doctors and more studies, that maybe in time we will find that herbs, but we have not been able to get the type of recovery that we do while we're using the parasite drugs also. So, can you explain exactly about what you eat and drink daily? My wife has MS, and I would love for her to get off the infusion. So, I would really appreciate if you would research that infusion and understand the mode of action, how it's working in the body. So, if it's the infusion that I'm thinking, it's a chemotherapy drug and it's destroying her B cells. And her B cells are a part of her natural defense. So we need B cells to protect us from infections. And when we destroy them, we're weaker. We're more susceptible to those parasites to taking over and other parasites moving in. And so our B cells are not the problem. I'm not going to go into detail about the diet here because I did that last week. And so if you want to find out more information about the Live Disease-Free Diet, go to our website. Under the main tab, the main menu, under research, you'll see the Live Disease-Free Diet Guidelines. You'll find the cheat sheet. You'll find like a really good description of what we eat. There's a video that I just did last week that's present there. So that'll give you a lot of information. And then if you want more, go to livediseasefree.com YouTube, and you'll find a couple of other videos that I shared, what I eat for breakfast, dinner, and supper. So there's lots of information there, and it's all free, absolutely. Julie, yes, I know. Isn't it horrible? Like, I don't know. I hope I can keep doing this work. So far, God has provided ways. So I'm really hoping that, and if you guys can keep us in your prayers, because God is in control. I know that from the bottom of my heart. There's no way I would have been doing this work for 10 years without Him guiding and directing and allowing this to carry on. Obviously, hopefully, that we're trying really hard to be very responsible and really serving His people the way that He wants us to serve them. But the only way we will carry on is by the grace of God, for sure. And a couple more here. So I still believe that EBV plays a part in the body's diseases. Well, I know that, Heidi, that's how you feel now, but the more you research, you'll probably start to feel differently. For example, through vaccines in the past, some of them had retroviruses. And so is it EBV, or could it be a retrovirus that's making your immune system a little bit more suppressed? That could be making you more susceptible to parasites too. So it's not just EBV. We don't focus on working with viruses. We just do all the rest. And the viruses are the smallest, and they're not a living microorganism, but they're the smallest culprits possibly, and we just haven't found the need to deal with them. But some doctors do antiviral therapy, and if you find it helpful, great. Yes, I know, Davita, it's awful what they're doing. Yes, it's crazy. Thank you for all your kind words. Please keep us in your prayers. Last couple of questions here. One more thing. Garlic can clean up the blood and get rid of viruses. Well, garlic is amazing for all kinds of microbes, but it's not going to cure MS by itself. I wish it would. I mean, we could write a book and cure the world, right? But it's not. But our students do use raw garlic is more effective, more potent than, and with the laws coming, I can't even say that with garlic. Like, it's just crazy. So we have to put an end to that. So please let all the Canadians know that they need to reach out to him and to that organization, and we need to fight here. All right, I'm going to let you guys go. There's still a lot more comments. Please type your comments in, your questions. We will answer them. Our team will answer them. And if you are at the place where you're like, thank you so much, Pam, and I really, really know, I've watched a ton of your videos and I believe that I have parasites, then make sure to watch my masterclass training so you can learn all the steps that we take to recover from these parasites. If you need support, if you don't have a practitioner that will help you, this is what we do. We help people all over the world in over 15 countries. We've helped hundreds of students, not just with MS, but with other diseases, to access what they need to recover from these parasites. And we have a lot of experience. So, I don't recommend people just going on forums and let's just try this parasite drug and let's try that one. Our students that are recovering from chronic disease, they test well for 3 to 5 parasite drugs. So if you just take one and you take suboptimal doses, you could actually make the parasites resistant, and then that drug will never work for you in the future. So work with someone. You have to work with someone when you treat if you really want to recover. And it is possible. Lots of people have done that. You can hear their stories on our website, on our YouTube page. There's a playlist there, YouTube Live Disease Free. And so make sure to watch my masterclass training if you need the extra support. You can become a wellness champion immediately. You can start to treat. And if you enjoy these talks, these discussions that we're having, and you appreciate the research I'm doing, please like and share and subscribe. Share this content with other groups. That's the only way things are going to change. It's never going to change unless we do something together, right? We need to work together. So, with that, I hope that you have a wonderful week and we will talk to you next week. Take care. Bye bye for now.